welcome back to Following Know It on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 211, and we are covering chapters 44 through Epilogue 7 of The Lost Metal. Elliot, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm in the recovery stage of a Sanderson book, I think, because we just read it all. So now I've had the adrenaline letdown at the end. I survived the Sanderlanche, and now I'm trying to recover from my adrenaline dump.
Paul?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to hear Elliot try to summarize 30 chapters of a Sanderlanche. Realistically, it's fine. A lot of it's one big scene. But I thought this was really funny whenever we got the, our reading assignment for the week, and it was like 30 chapters on paper,
You're welcome.
by number. But this is awesome. It's always my favorite part is wrapping up the end of these books. So I obviously cannot wait to talk with you guys about it.
I'm actually very proud of myself. Some of you people out there are insane and read like Stormlight books in 48 hours, like the entire thing, start to finish. I'm proud of myself for finishing half a Mistborn book in 2 weeks, and it felt like a sprint.
There you go. All right, let's roll intro, and then we'll time Elliot on how fast he can summarize half the Lost Metal. All right, Elliot, go.
All right, chapter 44, all the way through Epilogue 7. Yes, you heard that right, 7. I am going to wing this a little bit because if I go through my notes, this will take 18 and a half minutes. So, Marcy has met up with her Gross Blood crew, and they are off to infiltrate the set, and we pick up there in chapter 44. She's got Moonlight with her. She's got Twin Soul with her. They infiltrate the place. They do lots of super cool powers with magic systems that we have seen before, and some I think we surely have not seen before. But they do successfully break in, figure out what the set are up to. A few really important reveals dug in there, I think. But ultimately, Marcy and Marcy alone gets into this hidden village that she finds this whole settlement of people who have been tricked into thinking they are the only survivors of a catastrophe, and they've been living for it's like 7 years down here. And this is the result of the set and Edward specifically, I think's experiment with allomancers and creating this commune of allomantic breeders, I guess. They're trying to build up an army of allomancers, essentially. But all these people have been told all these lies, fed all these lies, kept under control in this city for like 7 years, which is absolutely nuts. Marcy is able to win them over, fights against the set, finds a portal where Autonomy is bringing her army through, stops the portal by burning up all the investiture in the portal. We've seen that before-ish. And frees all the people, makes it back out, saves the day for the whole planet. At the same time, Wax and Wayne are off doing the other necessary part of the save the planet, and they are chasing down Telson and the bomb, trying to find the bomb, trying to stop the bomb, trying not to blow up Elendel or the entire planet or whatever that is going to happen there. They chase Telson down to the top of this tower. They fight her. They stop her. Bomb's a fake. They see a ship out in the harbor sailing to Elendel. That must have the real bomb. They get onto the ship, which we're going to talk about in a little bit of detail. Fight the sailors on the ship, get to the bomb, have to solve the puzzle of how do you defuse the bomb without blowing yourself up or setting the bomb off. Wayne realizes that he has the necessary powers to complete the puzzle, defuse the bomb, does so, sacrificing himself to save the entire world, does so. Steris, meanwhile, doing cool things back in Elendel, evacuating the city, saving the day, impressing a lot of people. And then, Kelsier shows up. We get a bunch of Kelsier scenes, which is pretty cool. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, happily ever after that, right?
3 minutes and 20 seconds. Well
Whew,
done, Elliot.
I got to practice that. I got to shave that down.
That
All
was
right.
pretty good. I'm not to derail you, Trevor, but I have two things to say. First of all, Elliot walking through the crazy plot points and the jumping perspectives. I don't know that y'all know this reference, but I'm going to say this for our listeners. If you know this reference, if you've ever watched The Office and you've heard Dwight describe his perfect crime, it has very much the same energy of like the frantic all over. And so I just have to say that I know someone out there. Please comment so that this isn't just a waste and just
Validated.
me wasting my time. Please comment and let me know that you know what I'm talking about with Dwight's perfect crime. Second of all, and more importantly, Trevor, you can't time me because I could talk forever about this. We have a new surgeon this week who we needed to introduce, and that is David. Thank you, David. We
Thank you,
greatly
David.
appreciate your support, as always. I say this each time, but it really does mean a lot to us, and we're just really grateful for the community that we've gotten to start. From the three of us to now, I don't know, there are dozens of us now who get to talk about
Several
Stormlight,
handfuls.
yeah, and everything. And we've absolutely loved the whole way, and so we just can't thank each person enough. So thank you, David, for your support. So with no further ado, we'll talk about some lost metal.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Or on Scadril, as they would say, 16 upon 16s of us.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we're going to roughly split this episode into characters. We did this. We utilized this back while we were doing Stormlight, which, by the way, just as a side note, it's coming up on 2 years since we put down Rhythm of War, which is kind of crazy. But we're going to split this into characters, kind of go through each character as they close out their scenes in Mistborn Era 2. And let's start with Marcy, because she finds the community under the set's hidden layer, I guess you could say. Who saw this coming?
So I was certainly surprised about this. From the hidden community to is it a perpendicularity that's trying to be built? Is that what's going on? That was my question. Might be something else, but from this hidden community to autonomy's soldiers trying to be teleported into our world, it was a bit crazy. I didn't expect that Marcy was going to be the one with all this on her plate. It wasn't really her fault, but it was her problem at this time. And it was quite a lot. I think this it was quite a lot. That's what I have to say about it.
So what I'll say real quick, and then I'll throw it to Elliot. Moonlight and Kelsier and anybody who could successfully classify it as a perpendicularity does so. They do call it a perpendicularity, and they also say that it's autonomies. And so this isn't harmonies. And then they mention that autonomy shouldn't be able to do this based on what the Ghostbloods know. That there's something going on here that they don't bother explaining, that autonomy is creating a perpendicularity to pull the men of gold and red through.
Which maybe seems like it might be the fact that it doesn't seem like autonomy is actually on Scadrial or fully on Scadrial. Maybe I'm wrong about that, But it seemed like that was an important fact that, yes, they assumed this should not be possible because autonomy is not fully here yet. But yet the set was able to intentionally build in a specific intentional spot a perpendicularity.
Well, actually, the spot's an interesting question because Marisi asked the question, okay, if they're going to make a perpendicularity, why are you making it in the middle of your Allomancer prisoners that you are purposely hiding all this from?
Right.
And they never actually answered that question. So we might get into this later, but it actually begs the question if how is autonomy doing this? And I think one of the answers is, or a plausible theory could be, with enough pooled investiture in one place, then autonomy can change that, or can siphon that into a perpendicularity. So I think actually the presence of the prisoners is creating the environment for this to happen. Now, the only thing I have to back that up is when Marisi is entering the perpendicularity room and she sees like the warping of the air, she has an internal thought of, oh, Alec warned me not to put a bunch of harmonium in the same place because it does weird things. So either, I don't know if Entrone, is that his name, the mayor? I don't know if Mayor Entrone is purposely making this perpendicularity there, or if just all the factors were correct because they got a bunch of Allomances in the same spot. I don't actually know the answer.
I'm curious if it's also going to be related to this concept of avatars, or the fact that autonomy is not there, but autonomy has an avatar on the planet. Is that a necessary part of creating this perpendicularity?
Which, okay. No, we'll save that for later. I want to come back to avatars here in a second.
I'm going to mention that I want to come back to perpendicularities and to, I think, avatars some later as well. So we'll revisit. We'll revisit. I have things maybe more Cosmere wide that I don't think are as relevant to our plot discussion, but that could be interesting. Anyways,
so
I'm curious to know if.
Real quick,
go ahead, Trevor. Yeah.
Twin Soul or Moonlight? Who do we want to talk about first?
Twin Soul. That dude is crazy.
I agree. He quickly became a kind of a quick favorite for me. I think Twin Soul was really cool. I think Twin Soul showing off his, I don't know what to call it, his powers, where he kind of becomes a golem or something, like a rock giant.
Yeah,
I think
I've got some art to show you.
That instantly was like, okay, if I had to choose one power in the Cosmere to use, it would be that one. Like that's now what I want. Like as soon as I saw that scene, I was pretty blown away. I was like, that is sick. I want to do that. Please.
Okay, so Elliot, you said that you snooped on the Coppermind for this to prep for this episode. So you may have already seen this art, but this art is by Heatherly, and it's on Coppermind. There you go. I'll show it on screen for our YouTube viewers. There is Twin Soul, who is in his rock golem creation, marching down the tunnel. There you go.
I think that is so cool.
It's so cool.
Like I said, I think that's the power that I would want, really. Like at the end of the day, I'm like, that is just too cool.
Well, in the book, even this is, we should talk about this for a brief second. This was actually a moment where I appreciated Brandon's leaving it up to my imagination. I've complained about this in the past. I've asked for Brandon to describe things more. Yet again, in Brandon fashion, he doesn't overly describe this moment, but the things that he's saying are so outlandish. Like you have to engage your imagination. And I love that in this moment where he just says, and then the rosite formed into a giant 18-foot tall construct. And then he moves on. And it's like, hey, what? And like I had to set the book down and try and like picture that in my brain and start to piece all of that together. And it was just really, really cool.
I was picturing like Thunderclast. I mean, the only thing that we've seen before like this is a Thunderclast ripping itself off the ground and marching forward. So that's what I was thinking of.
And I gotta say, this dude's powers, ethers or whatever this is so powerful, flexible. He can do so much with this. It almost feels like a cheat code. That this guy's the cheat code of the Cosmere. He can. He can make ladders to go down chasms. He can see through walls by just like feeding some of his rosite through the cracks in the wall. Like, oh, okay, that's what's on the other side. He does a full-on Frodo and Sam at the Black Gate with pulling like a cover over all of them with the rosite and like camouflaging them so that the guards just walk right past. He creates a giant mech golem construct thing. Like, what can this dude not do?
I absolutely agree. I think I have the character that if it was like, okay, I worded that horribly. If I were thrown into the Cosmere and I had to like study underneath someone and learn from them or just kind of hang out with someone, I feel like Twin Soul is now who I'd want to hang out with. I'd want to learn these powers. Like these seem super awesome, really cool, and just really powerful and versatile. And so I'm like, he's a really cool guy, and I like what he's got going on. I'd like to learn a few things, you know?
It's really interesting that you say that because Marisi is offered that directly to study directly under Twin Soul, and she turns it down. We'll talk about that in a second. But I mean, the way you put it, Paul, yeah, she would study right underneath this guy, and she turns it down. All right, Moonlight.
Hold on.
Holding on.
One last Moonlight thing, then we can. Or one last Twin Soul thing, then we talk about Moonlight. Not only is the dude have so many cool powers, seems like he's awesome to hang out with. Did you guys catch his title? He shouts it out as he's charging into battle. His title, or I think he has a couple of them, but one of them is Raj of the Coriander Court.
Grand Etherbound of the 12 Kingdoms is his other one.
And that one seemed logical. Like Etherbound, we kind of at least know what that is. Like, okay, he's got this cool ether connection thing going on. But the Coriander Court, I would like a whole novella at least about that, please, Brandon. Coriander, like the spice in my spice cabinet, coriander, like please, let's go. Let's go.
I do agree that this was like he was throwing out a lot of titles that we do not know about. Like we don't, I don't know about this 12 kingdoms or whatever he's talking about. This Coriander Court, all the ethers in general, we still don't know a lot about them. So I agree. I would absolutely love a book about this. I wonder if he's the Sunlit Man.
Okay, I'm going to pause you right there. This is an old Trevor moment from the old like Stormlight archive stuff. I am really glad we're reading in the order we are.
Oh.
And I'll leave it at that.
Oh.
So is Tress Twin Soul? Is that what you're saying?
No, Tress is Shalon.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
And Moonlight. So Moonlight.
Yeah. No, Tress is Adolin's cousin, obviously, because Tress has yellow hair.
I think we did connect that already, didn't we?
Okay.
Anything else on Twin Soul? All right. Moonlight, or Shy. So her big moment in the Sanderlanche here is awesome. And I love her dialogue because she like the stamp that she gives herself. First of all, it turns her into an Elantrian proper, like from Elantris, not just from Cell. Like she's originally from Cell, but she's like, the stamp tells me that my parents moved to Elantris before I was born, and now I'm an Elantrian. And the first thing she says, or one of the first things she says after she stamps herself, is she turns around to the door that's being broken into, and she says, "Who is that? Is this a bunch of miscreants from the Rose Kingdom?" she's like trashing her own like empire as if they're like, you know, backwater, off-world, you know, whatever. And I just think that's really funny that she put that in the stamp to like down talk the Rose Empire where she's from, and I just thought that was a really funny detail. What'd you guys think of Shay, the Elantrian?
I thought this was really neat, and it's definitely, you know, true to her character. I think this would have been really cool to me, and the only thing I didn't love about it is that it felt almost similar to the ending of The Emperor's Soul, of like she kind of stamps herself and has like a new identity, I guess,
And
for a
runs
period
off.
of time. Yeah, like that's kind of her shtick, you know? And so it was not bad. It was cool and it was what was needed. But it did feel very like I'd seen that movie before, you know. It is in very different contexts. Like this was in order to save Mercy and move on, whereas Emperor's Soul, which it's been a hot minute since I've read, I remember as more of like an escape, a reset kind of thing to lay low rather than to fight back or defend or things like that. So a bit different, but either way, I think Moonlight Shy will always be one of the most impressive characters to me, like magic skill wise, of how she's able to. Because what we learned was that soul stamps are very difficult to do, especially for a person, right? That's like what the whole of her story was. And so to stamp yourself and completely become immersed as another individual, have a different identity, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty impressive. I think it's we just spent a lot of time praising Twin Soul. I think it's equal, if not more impressive, what Moonlight here has done as well. It's not a big giant, you know, crystal golem, so a little less on the cool points for me, but you know, still very impressive, very, very, very good.
I think she's sneaking her way into like top 10 Cosmere characters for me, if not, you know, higher. I actually like her character quite a bit.
The mischievous stamp artist who can glow white and gold.
Yeah, the Elantrian thing threw me off at first. It took me a little bit to figure out that's what was happening there. Actually, I listened to a bunch of these chapters on audiobook, which isn't my preferred method of consuming literature, but it totally works and I needed it to in the moment. But I marked this chapter as go back and read this in the physical book, and I did. And it wasn't until then that I think I kind of understood what was happening here, because it was crazy. And then I'm sure you guys at least noticed it. She uses the Aeon Door magic from
Yes.
Elantris, and I'm really glad we read Elantris before this. I'm sure you could read this without Elantris, and you just wouldn't understand what's happening in this scene. You're like, okay, that was crazy. But it's only like one chapter, right, where she just kind of goes crazy. But knowing a little bit about that magic and how like Raoden specifically studied and figured out Aeon Door, and then watching what Shy Moonlight does in this scene is actually really cool, because she gives Marcy a map of the Elendel Basin before she turns. Then she turns and she says, "Oh, give this to me when I go through." She goes through. Marcy hands her the map. She studies the map, and that is what allows her to draw the aeons that she needs to do the magic. Because remember, the whole thing about that was it was tied to the geography. They figured out the magic on Cell when they figured out how to properly draw the aeons in the map of the region. And so she has to do that with the physical region of Scadrial that she's on in order to do the magic.
So if you remember Elantris, the whole reason why Aeon Door stops working is because the world itself has changed. There's an earthquake, there's a huge chasm that's cut in the south to the south of Elantris, and that's why the Aeon Door stops working, is because it's not representing the world anymore. Up until this point, it's actually really good that you pointed this out, Elliot. up until this point, we were under the assumption, or we had the assumption, that Elantrian magic only works on Elantris because you have to be in, I forget the kingdom name of Elantris because that's the city, but there's a kingdom name. You have to be in the kingdom for it to work. This reveals that so long as you have a proper understanding of where you are and what is going on, you can tap into the door wherever you are, which is huge. Like that's all the magic we've seen so far is very like location based, location heavy, right? Which is a big reason why like the Ghostbloods are trying to get Stormlight off Roshar in Stormlight, which is before this. So knowing that you can access the door from wherever, so long as you have a proper understanding of a proper connection to the place you are and can sculpt the map, that has a lot of implications. Couple that with the fact that they use their Mistborn powers like a couple chapters later with the jars of pure investiture that Moonlight gave them. Like you could power other magic systems with Elantrians.
Definitely seems incredibly powerful. There's another bit of information there though that didn't quite make complete sense. So Moonlight gives Marcy a couple of things to give to her after she transforms, and it's not just the map. The other bit of information she gives her is a distance and an inclination. But it doesn't explain exactly what that's talking about. So I'm curious.
So if you remember at the end of Elantris, Raoden like teleports to the other city.
Oh yeah.
He's given like 1,274,000. Like he's given a number and he can jump there. That's what just happened. Is that they're talking about how Moonlight can like disappear. So Moonlight tells her, you need to tell me these numbers and this direction, inclination. So she's telling her the way back to the safe house, 2,000 whatever meters this way at 6 degrees, go. She just told her to teleport back to the safe house.
I'm proud to say I did remember that. I just remembered that the numbers with Raoden, that the teleportation thing is like very, very impactful, a very like valuable thing, but it's limited by, do you know how far you need to go? Because if not, you could end up just in the middle of nowhere, I guess.
Right.
My last thought on that before we move on, you said you assume that's the direction back to the safe house.
That is an assumption.
I'm actually wondering if she might have left the planet, because distance, yeah, that makes sense. Inclination, though, is specifically a term that like we use in like aerophysics. Not aerophysics, that's the wrong word. Astrophysics? That's probably better. To describe like orbital direction. If you want to talk about like what orbit you're in, inclination is one of those pieces of information you need.
Okay.
So I'm actually maybe wondering if she just gave herself directions to another planet.
To like Elantris?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool. And she shows up in Elantris too.
Mm.
Wow.
That would be pretty awesome. That's got to happen.
Anything else on Shay I? All right. So the community. Marcy ends the book pretty much in the community where there's this perpendicularity. She stops the perpendicularity by burning away all of the investiture with her newfound Mistborn is the incorrect term.
Friends.
Misting. Allomancer friends. Thank you.
Yeah.
Her cousin, right? She finds a cousin of hers.
Yeah, her like second cousin or something like that.
Yeah.
Or step cousin. And I'd like to give a criticism of Brandon Sanderson here. So everybody applauds him for good reason, and there are many reasons in this book to do so, and we'll get to them. Of planting seeds early in a series and then cultivating them later, going back to them. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. This whole like kidnapped Allomancer thing that was way back in Alloy of Law that is revealed here now. I don't know why, but it feels to me that Sanderson kind of forgot about them and then just kind of threw them in at the end here to resolve that from Alloy of Law. Like we never touched them since Alloy of Law. We have like they made maybe 2 sentences in the middle 2 books, and then we just stumble upon them here. It feels very like looking at my outline, what do I need to tie up? Oh yeah, these guys from the first book, I need to throw them in here. It felt kind of shoehorned in. And the reason why, one of the reasons why I think that is because in the epilogues here, there are so many well done tied up like investments that he does, which we'll talk about later. But this one, for some reason, maybe you guys can help me, just felt a little bit too fabricated.
I'll go ahead and say it didn't. For me, I didn't actually even realize that this was supposed to be connecting those dots. It makes sense. Like it's not far-fetched, it's not obscure. Like we know that there have been like these kidnappings going on, and they mention it several times. But yeah, I kind of agree that it didn't necessarily hit home as like this was the major piece I was wanting to see resolved, which is kind of funny because a notable amount of people being kidnapped is like a big deal, It is a big deal. I guess maybe that fell under the radar. I wonder if that fell under the radar for me a bit because, right, it was Maricy's, or really, like, technically Steris's cousin who was kidnapped. But other than that, we don't really know any of the people. It's all
right
people we're not invested in. I haven't been sitting here worried, like, what's going to happen to these people, or, it's like a piece missing. To me, it kind of felt like it was a little out of left field. So I see what you're saying. I've honestly been wrestling with this a bit of like, how do I really feel about it? I don't think I need to dig too deep of, was this a great choice like plot wise by Brandon Sanderson to do this? I think it was intriguing and a neat situation to see Maricy solve. But yeah, it didn't have, I guess, the high expectations that I usually hold for Brandon Sanderson's like tie-ins and the way he brings things back up. I feel like he didn't quite hit the bar that I'm super used to on this plot line alone. But that's not to say that it's bad. It just probably didn't meet the expectations that I have gotten comfortable with. I've kind of gotten spoiled to a lot of great tie-ins.
I wonder if a part of that is that it definitely, for me, felt a bit rushed. Like once Maricy discovers the community, from that point until like her plotline is done, basically, when they've destroyed the perpendicularity, felt really fast. It didn't feel like I had time to digest that or try and solve it as we were going. I wonder if there had somehow been more time in the plot, which this would be really tough too, because you're in the middle of the Sanderlanche. Like you can't slow down. It would break the whole Sanderlanche-ness of it. But if somehow you could let the reader slowly solve that mystery instead of it just kind of all getting dumped on Maricy at once. It just kind of like all got revealed to her at once. Oh, this is the people that were kidnapped. This is where the perpendicularity is. This is where Entron is. This is where the army's coming. Solved. If we had like been maybe drip fed a little bit of that across the course of chapters and maybe had a chance to solve it before Marcy did, that might have been perhaps a better reveal. But I don't know how you do that pacing wise, because you don't have time to step back and breathe there, because you're full breakneck in your other plot lines like Wax and Wayne.
I'm going to say this briefly because I don't need to go too long on it, but I actually have an idea of how he might be able to do that. So these people have been manipulated, brainwashed, whatever, into saying you can't go up to the surface. Everything is destroyed up there. It's unsafe. You'll get yourself killed. Don't go up there. I feel like we could have seen either in an what's it called? One of the newspaper articles, or like elsewhere, just hearing like word on the street from the constable's office of a crazy person popping up out of the ground being like, what's going on? Where's my family?
In the
I feel like you could have, the broadsheets. That's what I'm thinking. It could have been there. I'm also thinking it doesn't need to be in the broadsheets. I feel like there could have been an example maybe, or a time where someone did try to escape or did escape, and then us as the reader kind of has this red flag of, whoa, where did this crazy person come from? And then we see the discovery. I feel like you could do that actually. In my head that works. I'm sure there's reasons why that wouldn't work, but that's what pops into my head. Is I feel like you could kind of tease that or give like a sense of mystery. I feel like going into the ending of this book, compared to other books, as the series has wrapped up, I feel like there's always a great sense of like mystery in my head around a certain topic or question or two, where I'm like, I really don't know how this works, or I really don't know how this is going to get solved. And here, like with this, I guess it was kind of dropped there, but I feel like it would have been neat to have that dropped as a mystery, that we're like, whatever happened with that, or at least look back to it and be like, there was that crazy person who was running around.
Yeah,
we thought the world had ended. I guess this, is where that connects to. That makes sense, or something.
Let's talk briefly about her epilogue. We'll talk about more of Kelsier's side later, but Marcy is gifted a position in the Ghostbloods and surprises them all by turning it down. And her reasoning is she is an idealistic servant of the people. And given the information that she would gain from the Ghostbloods, she doesn't think she could properly do her job of what she believes she needs to do. You have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think this, of all the things that have happened in this book, I think this is what I've wrestled with the most. I think I love the decision that she made. I think it is true to her character, and I think it is arguably right of her to do what she feels called to do, and that's to stand up for the people of Ellendale in her world, right? And seek justice and fairness and all the things, right? However, on the flip side, she would make an awesome, absolutely awesome addition to the Ghostbloods. I really have appreciated the ending of this book because it's shown me a lot more of the Ghostbloods and given me a lot greater respect for the Ghostbloods. Besides this, we've mostly seen them just in Stormlight, and personally in Stormlight, compared to the major things going on, the Ghostbloods have always felt a little underwhelming to me, in all honesty. Through just looking at Stormlight, they felt a bit underwhelming. It's this little crime ring, and they want Stormlight, but like there's like gods fighting, and so I'm like, okay, that can wait. I want to look at this, and so it's always felt a bit underwhelming. So it's really, I've loved seeing more of the members and seeing their power, I guess, like all the characters we've seen, Twin Soul and the crew. And so I would love to have Marcy as a part of that, because I feel like that would just really elevate the group even further in my mind. And as we go forward, I'm sure they'll be mentioned more throughout the entirety of the Cosmere. So yeah, so it's really like I wanted somehow both to work, but it couldn't. I appreciate that Brandon is also letting another character just kind of be a character in her story, and to my knowledge, just kind of leaving her there. I'm assuming that this is I'm taking this as a hard like Mercy will no longer be like will not become a Cosmere world hopping character. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, that's fine. Things change. But I'm taking it as Mercy is elected to live her life. And I think that's a very honorable, good choice, you know? We have plenty of characters who have taken on this Ghost Blood World Hopper role in the Cosmere. So yeah, that's a lot of thoughts. I had a lot to say about this actually, but that's sort of my thoughts. That doesn't even give a definitive like or dislike. It's definitely like. I definitely liked this, but I was conflicted.
Question for you. If Mercy fulfills her dreams of becoming governor, just her knowledge that the Ghostbloods exist, I feel like would put her as an antagonist to the Ghostbloods. Because Kelsier in this Mercy epilogue gives the order to not move against Mercy to his Silverlight buddy, who we can talk about later. But I think she might have made an enemy of the Ghostbloods, whether they admit it or not here. How long will that last if Mercy becomes the governor of the basin? And moving into Era 3, I mean, I don't know how long that would be. I would agree with you, Paul, that Mercy would be done in the Cosmere if Mistborn Era 3 wasn't titled Mistborn Era 3 Ghostbloods, which it is. So I'm wondering if Mercy may be like Governor Aradel type figure of like the honorable governor in the background who the Ghostbloods are trying to work around.
That is interesting. I did not know that was the title for Era 3. So that does make me think that may be way more relevant. And that is a way more logical lead in from the end of Era 2 into Era 3 being a potential conflict. I almost wonder, I have no idea how much time is going to pass between then. We don't have that information, do we?
I don't know it if we do have it.
Yeah, that would be the question for me, because I could see there being conflict. I could also see that if Mercy is very successful and raises like a new crew of, I guess, very by the book, honorable people, that those could be the ones who would naturally butt heads with the Ghostbloods. But that's all speculation.
I want to talk more specifically about Kelsier's motives, maybe when we talk a little bit more dedicated about like Kelsier's epilogue later. But I could totally see a setting develop for Mistborn Era 3, wherever, of Mercy being the law-abiding force protecting Scadrial, and the Ghostbloods be the non-law-abiding force protecting Scadrial, and perhaps there being like a mutual respect there. I think Mercy just got a lot of exposure to what threats might be facing Scadrial as a planet. Like Mercy's going to get it now. She's going to know when Kelsier says things like, I need an army of Alamancers because the rest of the Cosmere might show up on our door with an army. Mercy has seen an extra Cosmere force come up with an army. And so will she maybe like strike up a partnership with Kelsier's Ghostbloods? I could see that working out.
Yeah, I do like that concept.
I do want to pause here briefly and point out the fact of just how far Mercy has come since we first met her. And I absolutely love it. As far as character development goes, she's got to be up there as far as like any of the characters we've seen in the Cosmere so far of how far they've developed. The only one, honestly, that immediately jumps out at me as possibly more development is Vin. Vin goes on this incredible journey from street urchin to god. Marcy just goes from like bookworm nerd to governor or potentially governor. But I don't want that to take away from the fact that her journey, I think, is really, really impressive of how she develops slowly throughout all these books to when in her epilogue, she drops the line of, yeah, I'm kind of posturing for governor. Like that doesn't feel far-fetched at all. You're like, oh yeah, Marcy would be a great governor. She's got the skills. She's got that genuine desire to serve the people. I really appreciated her character arc.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Anything else on Marcy? All right, what about Steris? So Steris has I would say, B line plot in this Sanderlanche, but nonetheless impressive. Like, I do enjoy Brandon Sanderson giving a character a set of skills or a set of aspects and then putting them in a situation where they can like flourish and be impressive. And that's what happens here. Steris stays behind in Ellendale, even though she knows the danger, to evacuate the city and save as many as possible. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I have to say it's really neat to see the progression in like her confidence and understanding that we've seen that before in her relationship with Wax. It's become very evident that she, we knew her originally as very by the book. Here's the rules, and she is still very much that. But instead of that being like more restrictive, I feel like in her setting rules for her and Wax's engagement, and very forced. It's now very, I don't know. There's just a different power behind it. She, makes herself integral to the story by coordinating all this like disaster relief planning, or sorry, not by coordinating it here, by having it pre-planned already because she's so like meticulous and prepared for, it's like if she made a grocery list, the first 10 things on the list would be her like emergency preparedness kit in case anyone gets injured on the way to the grocery store before you even make the grocery list. That's just how she works. And it's really neat to see that a spot is opened up for her to basically like utilize that as a strength and not as like a quirk. She's just worried, and stuff like that. I think it's really neat how that we kind of get a little happily ever after for Steris's career and life and stuff. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. It is minor only compared to the other stuff going on, but it is a really neat detail.
I felt like there were a few chapters there that could have easily been titled "The Validation of Steris," and it was fantastic because like having a friend like that. If you think about this, if you actually had a friend in life that was that meticulous about their planning, most of the time that would be really obnoxious. Like really obnoxious.
Yeah.
And then there's that one moment where you're like, thank goodness you were my friend because you just saved the entire day. And here in this moment, Steris saves like the entire city. Or maybe not quite that far because in reality, she ends up, Wax and Wayne stop the bomb. Steris then helps the city like manage the like flooding that happens afterwards. But like lives were saved, probably a lot, by her neurotic sense of having to plan every last detail. And she's able to just whip that out and go, oh yeah, I have a plan for this. And you have a plan for this? Yeah, I have a plan for this. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the random bands of mourning scene where they pull out the bands of mourning and they're like, these are going to save us. Oh no, they're not going to save us. The Malwish fly off with them and that's it. The end.
You talked earlier about the reveal of the kidnapped Allomancers not being satisfying or something. I think this was my moment where I felt that was maybe it's just I'm coming off of last book where the bands of mourning was just so important. And then here snuck in amongst all this nuclear bombs and invading armies from other planets. They just whip out the bands of mourning and the Malwish make off with it.
Yep.
End of story. Done. I'm incredibly torn between, is this a plot hook for later? Or was that truly just not important and the bands of mourning are completely irrelevant now? Like, which is it?
It's the first one. The bands of mourning certainly aren't irrelevant. How are they drained? I mean, that's a question you're supposed to ask Brandon Sanderson at your next Dragonsteel. Or, like, can you use the bands of mourning with the new hemalurgy spikes that don't actually kill people? Like, the bands of mourning is supposed to be like the key to further power moving forward. And now the Malwish have it. Does that excite you? Meh. Like, not me really, but like,
I actually have a theory here. I actually have a theory of what happened. Tensoon, who, side note, Tensoon is like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? The dude should not be able to be hoodwinked that easily by the Malwish guy. What's his name? He's got a doll or something like that.
yeah, doll. Is there an H in that name?
Maybe 2 A's, perhaps H. I don't know. The anyway, feels like Tensoon gets hoodwinked rather easily. At the end of that, Steris and Tensoon both look at each other like, did we just get tricked into that? Did they just steal the bands? I have a theory. I think they did. I think the bands are not drained. And here's what happened. The Malwish used I'm going to use Roshar terms because that's where I come from and I'm most familiar with. Fabrial
That's where you
blocked,
come from?
Yes. Well, that's where we started reading, man. I'm Roshar at heart. They used a device to block connection to the magic. I think this was even talked about at some point throughout these books, that like the Allomancy grenades, I think there was a version of that. It's not the like suck out your Allomancy. I think there was a different one, perhaps, that like blocks magic.
Okay.
I'm wondering if the Malwish dude set up this little scenario where he's actually using some kind of device, Allomancy grenade. Maybe he's just burning the power. I don't know, to create like a bubble
or something.
Yeah, something, or some crazy combination of metals, because the possibilities get kind of endless as soon as you start doing that. Where they all go to use the bands, they're like testing them, and they don't feel anything. Like, oh, they're drained because they don't feel anything. What if they're not drained? It's just being blocked. They can't use it because there's some kind of a blocker up. And so when they hand it over to him, thinking, oh, well, it's just a hunk of metal now, here you go, they actually handed a completely charged full bands of mourning over to the Admiral guy.
Yeah, I can totally see it. Anything else for Steris? She gets a seat on some government position, which she was actually kind of like freaking out about until she saw the job title, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I could do that."
Really, really quick, one note. It was really easy to miss. And I was listening on the audiobook and I kind of noted down as that was weird, and then I had to go back and read it later. Did you notice in the scene where she's trying to figure out how to sink some cargo ships to form like some barriers out in the harbor to block the incoming tsunami?
Yes.
Did you notice who she gets help from?
I did.
There's a group of. Did you notice the strange people, Paul, in the scene?
Who goes sink a bunch of ships?
They're not described, which is why it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm really trying to recollect this. I do not know.
So
I must have missed this.
the way it plays out is something like this. Steris is firing off orders, right? She's got her plan. So she's like, okay, dock workers, go do this. Construction workers, go do this. Foreman, you're in charge of this. And then she turns around and it's described as, I think specifically there's 8 people standing there. And Steris goes, huh, I don't recognize what you people are. And then like keeps firing off orders. And then she gets to the point where she's like, okay, we need to sink those ships. And the leader of those little 8 people pipes up and says, oh, we can do that. And Steris again kind of stares at him. And it specifically mentioned like, and Steris was confused about who they were and says, okay, great, if you can do that. And then they fly off. They fly off, which Steris isn't too, freaked out by because like coin shots, Allomancer, people fly. But then she notes like, one of them had a weird tattoo. Oh, well, moving on. And they go on. I have read enough Brandon to know those moments are usually something hidden there. And I don't, it seemed like it wasn't enough to definitively say like, oh, that was this or oh, that was that. That could be a number of different things hidden in there. But I felt like maybe the obvious answer there was perhaps those were Ghost Bloods. That was the like Elendel contingent of the Ghost Bloods that had been sent to help. And they just showed up and were like, hey, let's help. And so Steris sees like the Ghost Blood tattoo on one of them as they fly off. But it's also specifically not stated that they are like coin shots flying. So could they be using other magic systems to fly and sink ships really easily?
Completely feasible. Yes, they are. I assume they are the Elendel Ghost Blood Stabulary. And they were sent there by Kelsier because as they fly off, the lead guy says, your sister sends her regards.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the, we're assuming Maricy's joining the Ghost Bloods, nod. And then in the Kelsier Sazed epilogue, which we'll get to here in a little bit, Kelsier specifically says, you're welcome for my people's help saving the day, by the way. So, Twin Soul and Moonlight, and then these 8 as well. So,
but clearly that had to have been like a squad of Windrunners, right?
It's not impossible. I mean, we don't know what Stormlight 5 has for us, so.
Or at least a Windrunner, maybe, a Windrunner and his squires or something.
Kaladin lives in Elendel, undercover. Confirmed.
I mean, whenever you first described it, and there was like one with a tattoo. I mean, it sounds like a Bridge 4 kind of thing, But I don't know why they'd be here going to just go sink ships and stuff, I'm missing a couple pieces.
I think we might have some other Rosharans showing up in one of the later epilogues. We'll come back to that.
We did talk about a connection to the blonde people who show up here. So it's with that happening, I think it's very likely that a notable amount of people may have found their way into Scadrial. So,
all right, gentlemen, the main event. Wax and Wayne run their way through a storm drain, fight off Wax and Wayne Prime, and find the lab, chase some trucks, have a beer, which we'll talk about, and go to the rocket ship, fight off Wax and Wayne Prime. The sword does his work, which is an epic scene, almost ending on creepy. And then they chase down the warship. Who wants to start with what they want to talk about?
I want to talk about shards for a second. We might get into this more, but autonomy, harmony, ruin, preservation, all these roles, they kind of all feature in places throughout these segments. And it starts with several glimpses that we get of autonomy. I don't know if you remember, Wax like has a conversation with a dead thug, and it's autonomy speaking through whoever this random person is to Wax.
Can I read
and they
it?
share a chat. Oh yeah. Oh.
This is one of the quotes I want to read. So this is on page 361 in my book. This is autonomy, or actually more accurately, it's Babadin speaking, not necessarily autonomy. But she starts, "It's not the bomb you should worry about. It is the destruction I have sent if the bomb fails." "I think you're bluffing," Wax said. "Think what you wish, but you yourself know the strength, the capacity one has in those moments before death. It is when the soul is pushed to the limit that true exceptionalism manifests. And so there must be consequence, as final and terrible as death, for failure."
That's exactly what I wanted to key on, was the pretty fascinating philosophy there, I guess, of does autonomy or Bavadin or whoever this is truly think that they're doing right in allowing the cream of the crop to succeed by generating all of this death, by creating all of these terrible apocalyptic scenarios with maybe the silver lining of, well, yeah, the heroes do emerge in times of crisis. That's true. That's absolutely true. But can you use that as justification to create an apocalypse? I,
So
go ahead.
I'm really excited about this. What else does this sound like? We've seen something like this before.
I am we already said this, Rosharan at heart. So I relate everything back to what I've seen on Roshar. I'm not sure if this is what you're referencing. Maybe it will be. Maybe it won't be. What I thought of when I read this was some descriptions that we've gotten as far back as the Way of Kings, I think, on our Stormlight books about the group called the Envisagers. And Teft comes from the Envisagers and tells us about what the Envisagers do. Isn't Shalon too? Shalon's mom or something like that is Envisagery, perhaps?
Maybe.
Is that a theory? Okay,
That's a theory.
Maybe. Envisagers, though, a real thing. And what they do is they're trying to get the Knights Radiant to emerge by like putting people in life-threatening situations. They're like, we're gonna drop a giant rock on you and try and get your Knights Radiantness to manifest, kind of things. Sounds very autonomy. Very autonomy.
Do you have anything, Paul?
No, I think Elliot is definitely onto something. Because I definitely remember this. This is what I was thinking of, is that, you know, there are surge binders, our radiants in Stormlight are often produced from being put in a difficult situation. So that also happened, I think, in Mistborn Era 1, a little bit of like trying to figure out who was a misting or not by kind of, sadly, kind of I think they like abused children to like try and get them to, if they had any elementic powers, to use them, you know. um that was we know the cause of that. So back to Stormlight, back to Roshar. That is very interesting. I'm wondering if that's something that may actually be an autonomy thing, or if that is just this Envisagers group, similar to maybe Era 1 of Mistborn, just being a group that doesn't have good morals, that's trying that has a very poor standard of ethics, that's trying to figure out trying to find the surge binders, you know.
Theory for you, gentlemen. This is exactly what I was talking about, Elliot. And as we've discussed previously, Trellism on Scadrial was a seed planted by autonomy 1,000 years ago, even before the Lord Ruler. I give to you the Envisagers, the version of such on Roshar that autonomy has planted. Autonomy has planted the seed of prove yourself through dangerous ways, and that's autonomy's seed on Roshar.
Seems perfectly logical to me. Terrifying and perfectly logical.
Yeah. Trevor has mentioned there potentially being a fourth shard on Roshar for a while. I don't remember if your theory was towards a specific shard or just that there is another shard. So
I've juggled with a couple different ones.
That could help your theory, hypothetically. And I could certainly see that being the case. I think that'd be a really cool connection. I don't have anything to push against that. Right now, I feel like that stands.
Elliot, in the outline, you have a bold claim that the best scene of Mistborn Era 2 is not in the 70-something chapters. It's in the 50-something chapters. Which one?
Oh, easily. It's not even close. The best scene of Mistborn Era 2 by far is Wax and Wayne sitting in front of a billboard sharing a beer. And it's chapter 58 in the book. It's like at the entrance. Well, we're in the Sanderlanche at this point. It's definitely in the Sanderlanche, but it's almost like he puts the Sanderlanche on pause. We've ramped up. Marcy has already discovered the community. Things are starting to move fast, and all of a sudden, the pace of the wording in the story just goes and pause. It almost felt like a Hoyd, what are they called, moment?
Therapy session?
Yeah. Where like, and this has literally happened in Stormlight. We're in the midst of battle and Hoyd goes, pause, and has a chat with somebody. It kind of felt like that. We kind of like stepped away from the hectic chaos for a second, and Wax and Wayne are just like recovering. They're just sitting down and talking. And it really was the scene where we dive into Wayne's story. And we were set on this path already, all the way from the prologue of this book, which gave us a Wayne flashback. So I think we knew going right into the story, like, oh, okay, this is gonna be Wayne's story. Well, this is the climax of the Wayne. Well, is it? No, it's not. This is the prep for the climax of
this is that
the
ascension
Wayne story.
Yeah, before you get to the climax.
Exactly. This is the one where it really went deep, and they talk about Wayne's ongoing struggle with forgiving himself or earnestness of those that he's wronged. And the way they talk through this is really, really cool and powerful. And yeah, I've got a quote. Should we just read the quote? We should probably just read the quote. Do you guys have any thoughts before I read the quote?
Yeah, my only thought is I'm glad you keyed into setting this up from the prologue, because this entire book, Wayne has been referencing this story that his mom told him, that it's this crazy tall tale of Alamancer Jack, and he goes through this ravine, and then there's this canyon, and then there's a mesa. And so throughout the story, Wayne makes the assumption that Wax is the hero. And so he's like, okay, and he's coaching him. He's like, okay, so you're the hero, so we're going to find some bad guys in this ravine. There's going to be some snakes. And Wax is like, shut up. Like, just focus on what we're doing. Shut up. And yeah, so this whole time, he's like, oh, we can't cross the river without the hero. Oh, the hero's here. Okay, good. And then, the ravine is the sewer. All of that builds up to really the warship, but also this scene. So go ahead.
Actually, you keyed into something I should talk about before I read any part of it. You talked about how Wayne up until this point has assumed that Wax is the hero. And like you said, he literally won't do things until Wax is there, because he's like, oh, he's the main character. Part of this discussion is Wax telling Wayne, you're a hero. And that finally sinking into Wayne's brain. There's even a part, Wayne has such great internal dialogue, like it's pretty hilarious. But he has this moment like where, no, I'm not the hero. But wait, Wax doesn't Wax doesn't lie. Wax tells the truth. He says what he believes, and he's saying, I'm the hero. Am I the hero? Surely I'm not the hero. Could I be the hero? Maybe I'm the hero. That moment was pretty cool. But one of the things that Wax says to him, I thought was pretty fantastic as well. I want to just go ahead and read it. This is kind of like right smack in the middle of that scene. Wax leaned forward. You can't keep digging up the corpse of who you used to be, Wayne. You can't keep toting it around. Let him stay buried. Consider who you are, not who you left behind. That's what I've learned these last few years. It's made all the difference. And Michael Kramer delivers that way better than I just did. So, like, go pull up your audiobook and listen to it, because this scene is amazing, delivered by him. But that moment in particular, super cool.
Just real quick on that, this might be Michael Kramer's best performance in a Cosmere book. Like, this book, he does so well. Like, Brandon was mean in this book. He's like, and now we're going to throw, like, he specifically says, this is Wayne's accent with a twist of like Ellendale street gang, go. And he does it. And you're like, what? Like, that sounded like exactly how you described it, and you pulled it off. Like, that was crazy. And then he's in exactly the right character for like Wayne's internal dialogue, getting to the warship, and how he like pushes Wax off the warship, and he just delivers that line. And then when Wayne finally chokes up at the end and admits, I'm the hero, like, Michael Kramer does such a good job.
Yeah. Even Wayne himself would need to take his hat off in respect for Michael Kramer's performance. You know, it's really, you're right. It's really spectacular. This whole series and all of Wayne's dialogue is always something ridiculous. He has a fantastic voice for Wayne, like that he uses. And I think that's part of what has made me love Wayne as a character. I have to say, I think I agree with Elliot. I think this might be, if it's not my favorite moment, it's second or something like that. It's really good. It's really nice to have this. And, you know, I've thought about this a bit. Earlier, when we were talking about Maracy, we were talking about payoff. A bit about payoff between, you know, the start of the dilemma of people being kidnapped to what we're seeing now, feeling like it maybe didn't have the payoff that we might hoped or thought possible. This delivers a lot in a really short amount of time, and I just think that it's done so well because it's so true to Wayne's character. Wayne is not the character to sit down and be serious with. You know, I don't think he would take a Hoyd therapy session. I think if Hoyd sat down with him, it would just be wisecracking jokes the whole time, and he would get the wrong meaning from the story, whatever. But Wayne loves and reveres Wax. He, like, that's what sinks into him, is Wax specifically telling him the things that he needs to hear. The truth, him being a hero, him needing to let go of his past, forgive himself. All these things are delivered from Wax to Wayne, and it finally gets through. Like, Wayne has kind of been this just ridiculous, ridiculous, like, comical character that doesn't take things too seriously, and I love him for it. I think this has been my favorite, like, comedic character that I've read in the Cosmere. I think it's just really good all the way around. And I think, given the character that we have and the relationship to Wax, I think this was just really well done, and how it pays off in the impact that it has on Wayne, and as the reader, like, kind of the way that you get to see this unfold. I think was pretty dang good. I think it was magical. I thought it was awesome. I think I agree that this may be my favorite scene. Either this or just, you know, Wayne's story at the end of this book is definitely a bit, you know, touching and everything. And it's really neat to use this character, to use Wayne, who's kind of been the ridiculous sidekick, you know, as this. Like, I feel like we all expect Wax to maybe make like an honorable sacrifice for the people and those he loves. I feel like with Wayne, it just holds a bit different, of a meaning and different approach. And I think this was just really well done.
Elliot, you're wrong that the beer scene is the best scene in Mistborn Era 2 because it's followed up by the warship. And to have Wayne, of all characters, have a top 5 Cosmere character moment, like in anything we have published, I put it up there with Kaladin going back for Dalinar on the Shattered Plains. Like, seriously,
Wow.
he Wayne understands what he's supposed to do. He steel pushes Wax off the boat, and the last thing you see is Wax upset at Wayne. Like, that's so perfect. And then he goes on and says, well, he has a conversation with Harmony, and he admits to Harmony, I'm the hero. He finally admits, I'm the hero. Goes and does what only he can do, as explained by Harmony. You're the only one in the world that could do this, and I need you to be the hero right now.
I particularly noticed how Wayne does all that and he doesn't hesitate. Like that was a moment for me that really hit it. Is it wasn't Wayne sat down, considered, we're used to Wayne being kind of silly, over the top, ridiculous, but when it really came down to it, he doesn't hesitate for a second. He realizes it's him and goes, "Oh, okay." Shoots Wayne off the ship and goes and does it. Like he doesn't even think twice.
I have to say also, what I could not help but think about is, okay, so we were, like I've said, we were just talking about payoff or mentioning things earlier to kind of give us as the reader significance later on. The fact that we knew how that what is it, bend alloy is just super expensive, and that Wax is beyond, Wayne is beyond filthy rich. Like he's basically the wealthiest person in the world here, it seems like.
Yeah.
Like he's just got so much cash that he just has tons and tons of bent alloy metal on him, and that this wouldn't really be possible without it. But given his character, I almost wonder if Brandon had to kind of go back and write in this whole financial standing of Wayne, like to justify him having so much bend alloy at this point, which I think is really funny. And it just made me laugh. Honestly, whenever Harmony is like, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing, he's like, you could do it, but I mean, it would just take a lot of metal. And he's like, well, let's see what I've got. And he's pulling it out of his like socks and just everywhere. And it's just really funny. And yeah, it was very, I like how this was very sincere, but still very true to Wayne's character.
Yeah.
I think it's just masterfully done. I think I just got chills just thinking about it. So I think it was very well done. I think this is my highlight, was Wayne in general. I think was just a wonderful character. And it also, as I mentioned, the money thing and the bend alloy, I still think that those chapters were where I've laughed the most, like reading this book, is him, number one, hating the accountants. Just his like dynamic of absolutely loathing them. There's nothing worse than having to talk about what to do with my money. And two, him being filthy rich and being the best predictive investor ever. And how we're able to relate to it because we are in a modern age seeing him invest in things that we know would be lucrative, right? It's just hilarious to me. And I couldn't help but think through all of that while this was going on.
And to top it all off, the cherry on top, Wayne is in this moment, his hero moment. Trevor just said top 5 Cosmere moments or something like that. And Wayne refuses to do it without a what?
A hat.
A hat.
A hat. Yeah, you're right.
He makes
forget.
Harmony make him a Harmony hat so that he can speak like Sazed as he does the thing.
And he adds an I think at the end.
Including the I think at the
It's so
end.
good.
Oh my gosh.
Chef's kiss.
It
Mwah.
was genius. Oh man. That was like I said, it was sincere but so true
And
to
well,
Wayne's character. Him being
Elliot,
like, I need your hat. And he's like, I don't even have a hat. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
Make one.
Elliot,
You're
I
God.
don't-
Make one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to that part on audiobook, but somehow Michael Kramer does both Sazed and Wayne in the same voice. So he does that in that payoff. And I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do Wayne's accent as Sazed and add an I think at the end? And it's incredible. So no, the beer scene is not the best scene in Mistborn
No,
Era 2.
The beer scene is still better. The
no.
scene is still better.
I do think up against the wall, I do think the Harmony scene is the best, but I think it's obviously made so much better because of the beer scene. So it's kind of almost hard to compare.
Okay, are we ready for epilogues?
Should we go straight into, well, hold on. Is this epilogue or is this? When does Wayne pass into the beyond? Try
That's
to
the
read this chapter
that's-
without crying chapter.
That's the last chapter, chapter 74, I believe.
Yeah,
we can talk about that.
Let's stew on that for just a second because I have a few thoughts and questions for you guys. So on top of all of this, we just saw emotional connection between Wax and Wayne, powerful moment. Then we have Wayne's hero moment, saves the day, sacrifices himself, epic. Then we go into Wayne dies, has that in between moment where, think back to Kelsier, right? Kelsier dies and has this long conversation with Preservation.
Laras.
Yeah. Then Wayne sees Harmony and has a little chat with him, and then shed a tear, passes into the beyond at the end of it, sees some interesting things and experiences some interesting things in this chapter. First off, he sees autonomy retreating and the red mist leaving the planet. I think later on, I guess Telsin, they explain they find dead Telsin, who is carved onto her own arm. You have proved yourselves for now, or something like that, as a parting message from autonomy.
Yep.
So interesting. We've staved off autonomy for now. And then here's the thought for you guys. I want your thoughts on my thoughts. Wayne goes to pass into the beyond, which I'm assuming, Paul, this is the moment where your wife came into the room bawling, as you said when we started this book.
Was for reference. Yeah, she was a bit emotionally impacted, as you should be with Wayne's death.
I didn't cry in this scene, but I felt the heartstrings were tugged a little bit. I felt it. What I want to get you guys' thoughts on is something happens as he's passing into the beyond. Did you guys catch it? It is specifically described that he feels a warmth onto him. And then he turns and sees the light and passes into the warmth. This reminded me of something that we've actually talked about a lot because it's very vague and we've tried to attach a lot of things to it. I now maybe have yet another thing to muse on when we see these scenes. And what I'm referring to, what I'm talking about is Dalinar. Dalinar has had multiple moments where he's either in a vision, or maybe even there's a few when he's not in a vision, where he experiences a light, and very specifically, he describes it as a warmth. There's a warmth in the distance that he feels. And we've talked about odium. We've talked about the spiritual realm. We're talking about like what is happening to Dalinar when he has these weird, like otherworldly, divine moments where he feels warmth. I felt like that was a section we just got as Wayne was passing into the beyond. Could Dalinar somehow be like
On
going
death's
that
door?
direction towards the beyond? Like, is this another clue?
Maybe. I mean, so some of the specifics that you're referring to with Dalinar is he has a vision of himself and young Gavilar, and they're like hanging out as young kids. And this is at the end of Oathbringer. And he then asks the Stormfather, "What was that vision?" And the Stormfather says, "I didn't give you one." Okay. And then that's like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through Oathbringer. At the very end of Oathbringer, Dalinar is sitting down to write Oathbringer the book in the last chapter and feels a warmth and a light, and asks Navani to close the curtains because it's distracting me from the other light. And that's how the book ends. And I think there's another one that I'm forgetting. That there's one other scene with Dalinar. Maybe him accepting his pain. He feels a warmth and a light when he's talking to Evie, and Evie forgives him. So yeah, maybe. I mean, it might be as simple. It might be as it might be just a descriptor for the spiritual realm, but which is specifically not the beyond, but the spiritual realm exists with the cognitive and the physical, and it may be just when you tap into the spiritual realm, you feel a warmth and a light. So at this moment, Wayne's spirit is going with him. He's uniting with his soul, basically. Like
Sure.
I would lean that direction, that he's feeling a spiritual realm sensation as he dies.
I was gonna say you could write this down for like the first time ever. I'm thinking it's not that deep.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm kind of in the camp of I think those might just be the descriptive words that you have to use to leave me as the reader feeling good about this. Like feeling bittersweet, the sweet side of it, of Wayne is going into the beyond, but he's going to a place we don't know, but to a place that's warm, or maybe that's filled with light and hope, or something like that. I think similarly with the moments that we mentioned with Dalinar, that it's probably to convey a feeling of warmth, like you've done the right thing, or that no matter what happens, you could be proud of where you are or who you've become, or things like that. I feel like it's almost referring to like a general good, warm, fuzzy feeling, rather than, yeah, y'all can quote me on this once I'm wrong. I'm like, it's just a general feeling rather than a major Cosmere implication of the future of Dalinar and the world and everything, which, now that I say that, will probably become the case. Will probably, I'll probably that warmth is like a whole other magic system we don't know yet, and all these things. So,
on a scale of like, this has huge implications and this is Wayne dying, I'm way closer to this is Wayne dying camp. Like, I'm not reading into this.
I kind of mentioned this when we were talking about Marcy. I feel like we're getting a lot more of like the story kind of tied up in a bow, happy ending, rather than, well, we get that with our other stories, but I feel like there's more of an air to a lot of our other stories and characters that they're gonna come back up, or something else could happen, or they might, especially end of era 1 of Mistborn, it was definitely, there were a lot of characters that like, oh, we're going to see more of you in the future in the Cosmere, like, for sure. And I feel like there's less of that with this story?
So I would agree with you if you include Secret History, because Secret History is like a retroactive. Let's tease some future in for Spook and Kelsier and Hammond, and like these people go on to do stuff. But if you take just the Hero of Ages, I mean the book ends with them walking through a meadow and the sun is shining, and that's the end of the book. Like I don't.
That's true. I'm thinking mostly like we know what happens with Harmony in that one, Sazed becoming Harmony,
Right.
but that is still probably the outlier example, actually.
So part of what makes some of the best scenes with Wayne and his death scene here are actually the scenes after his death scene and how everybody handles it and what Wayne leaves behind for everybody. So an epilogue I never thought I wanted or was expecting is actually the Alriandra epilogue, and it's quiet and it's subtle, but it's actually really cool that Alriandra's she had some like art gallery venture that she went in debt over, and now she's working in like the forges to pay it off or something, and she gets left 120 million in like 100 million in stocks and 20 million in cash, and that like completely changes her life, obviously. And then it's just like small scenes like that, and we'll get into the other ones here, where Sanderson is like extremely good at tying up loose ends at the end of the series here, where that epilogue doesn't like give me like huge Cosmere implications, unlike some of the other ones that we'll talk about here in a second. But it just feels nice. You're like, oh, well, even after death, Wayne is making a good impact. Like that's really cool.
Or the fact that he's paid someone to play a joke on wax every day of his life for eternity.
Yes,
That also.
he set aside $500,000 to do that.
To leave dead frogs in his coat pocket and half-eaten sandwiches in his boots. And Wayne lives on. Wayne absolutely lives on.
Paul, you made the statement that you assumed Marasi was done, like in the Cosmere. I make that assumption for Wax. Like Wax has several very good closing scenes here. Some like remembering and appreciating Wayne, of thanking Wayne for giving him the rest of his life with Steris and his kids. Like that's a really touching scene. It's actually Steris's epilogue that Wax. It's 2 days after detonation, and Wax is accepting Wayne's death, and he turns to the sky and says, "Thank you, Wayne, for giving me my life." Like he was upset with him for taking it at the time, but within 2 days he forgives him and appreciates him for making that sacrifice.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I personally could see it with both. That was mostly what I'm thinking of with, I feel like a lot of our characters are kind of, this is their story. Like you said, I am now more open to Marasi maybe being a part of future Cosmere things with her connection that we know she has to the Ghost Bloods, or lack of connection she has, I guess. But yeah, I think that's a good point.
I kind of imagine maybe the next time we see Marasi will be Stormlight Era 2. Roshar calls up Scadrial for help on whatever big bad guy they're facing, and who answers that phone? Marasi answers that phone because she's the like leading political figure on Scadrial 10, 15 years down the line.
Marasi writes a letter to Yasna in the epigraphs of Stormlight 6.
Sure. I buy it.
So, almost putting this book down, but moving forward, the epilogues that have the biggest implications are the Kelsier one And yeah, that's it. The Kelsier one where he's talking to Sazed. There's some really interesting dialogue between the two of them, and I want to read it. So give me 1 second.
While you're looking up quotes here, I'll drop a few interesting things that get revealed here. They talk about Kelsier specifically and actually answered a few of my questions. It's specifically mentioned here that Kelsier can't use metals. He's using hemalurgy, but simply to keep him alive or to simply keep him pinned to this body. And he
Yeah.
talks about like, him and Sazed are having a conversation. Sazed is like, where do you want the metals? It wouldn't help you do you any good. And then they go on and talk about that. But interesting little bits of answers about Kelsier himself there. He's not an Allomancer anymore.
He's not an Allomancer anymore, and it wouldn't work on him right now.
Right.
According to Sazed. So let me read this for you. So Kelsier starts this. Marsh will live, Kelsier said, musing. Does that mean we have atium again, or did you find another way? The Khandra found atium dust in Waxilium's destroyed laboratory. It appears that if you detonate harmonium against trellium, or I suppose bavidinium would be the true name, it creates some amount of atium as a byproduct. Lerasium? Kelsier asked. I'm sorry. That is all annihilated in the explosion. We've tested several times now. It wouldn't work on you anyway, Sazed said, not in your current state. And then 2 pages later, Kelsier and Sazed are getting a little bit more confrontational by the end of this chapter. And this is Kelsier saying, they're going to come back. We need to be ready. With technology, more with our powerful resource. We need allomancers and ferrochemists. Is there a way to expand our access to Metalborn? They have the seed inside them, don't they? The heart of preservation? I don't know, Sazed whispered. Are you lying? Have I ever lied to you, old friend? I, Kelsier said, am going to protect our people, whatever it costs. Please tell me I won't ever have to protect them from you. That depends, Sazed said, entirely upon you, old friend. It's a great epilogue because Sazed lies to Kelsier. And then 2 pages later, he says, would I ever lie to you? So Kelsier could have the key to becoming a full Mistborn again, and Sazed's not giving it to him.
And you say he lied. I'm trying to connect all the dots here. And we know that because Sazed says, yeah, there was no Lerasium. But we know there was because he gave some to Wayne.
And he knows it because he gives it to Wayne and then tells him, I don't know how this happened, but we're not going to tell anybody. That's one of the last things he tells Wayne, right? Wayne's the only one that knows, and he's dead.
Right.
So Sazed explicitly lies to Kelsier at the end of this book and then says, would I ever lie to you?
And this...
I don't want to be like a devil's advocate wrongfully, but is there a chance that this is because we know Sazed's like foresight and some knowledge has kind of been wiped or hindered? Or is this really like genuine like lying, trying to intentionally withhold information from Kelsier?
Kelsier needs Lerasium. Sazed and the Khandra now have it, at least a small amount, and are going to start making it. And he's deliberately hiding it from Kelsier.
Okay.
Because he doesn't trust him anymore.
Paul, were you trying to go down a path of like maybe he's got memory loss and he's not intentionally lying to Kelsier?
Yes, sort of. I do think that's a very tall order. Like I think that's hard to believe that, especially given what he talks about with Wayne. I think that's hard to believe. I think Trevor's right. I think he doesn't trust Kelsier, and given the the epilogues that happen, kind of agree. I think Kelsier may be a bit too extreme in general. So I kind of defend his decision, I'd say.
I think I could maybe go down that thought train of maybe Sazed's just broken, not necessarily like actively lying, if not for the extremely ominous tone of this whole chapter. And it it starts off with this too. I want your guys' thoughts on this. This is early on in this Kelsier epilogue, and it's just Kelsier's thoughts. A figure walked along the edge of the skyscraper's top toward Kelsier. Harmony wasn't accompanied by his dark double, the shadowy version that some these days, a representation of his other self. And then later on in the epilogue, Kelsier muses on the fact that ruin has always been stronger than preservation. And it's clear, I think very clear by the end of this, that Kelsier is very much doubting what side Harmony is on. Is ruin getting control of the duality of Harmony?
And if you'll remember, Wayne sees a duality of Harmony in his last scene in the speed bubble. There's two Sazeds. There's a shadow Sazed and then Harmony who he's talking to. So going back to the splitting harmonium thing, it might actually have some interesting ramifications if you can begin to perceive ruin and preservation as two separate shards once again. If you can split them, you might do some weird things to Sazed, which would be a good reason for Sazed to keep it quiet if he has no idea what's about to happen. Another side note real quick. Kelsier is talking to Harmony in this chapter and lists like their potential allies that they could reach out to in the Cosmere. And he lists Moonlight's homeworld of Cell. He lists the homeworld of the Ethers, which, given the very brief sentence we got from Twin Soul, does not seem like a viable option to me. Like, Twin Soul was like, yeah, you don't want to go back there right now. And then the third one was Mythos. I don't remember what that is. I'll go look that up in a little bit. What's missing? There's something conspicuously missing where Kelsier has been.
Has he been there? Are you talking about Roshar?
Yeah. He's omitting Roshar as a potential ally.
And help me with this because I'm trying to.
This is after Stormlight 5.
Okay, that's my question. I'm trying to think about my timeline here. This is after Stormlight 5.
So
yeah, okay, hold on.
Something happens on Roshar where the Ghostbloods are no longer have access to it, or at least do not see Roshar as an ally.
Okay, you ready for this? Let's bridge. Let's segue with that thought into the Milan epilogue.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I want to keep that thought because I think it's going to be relevant to where my brain is going after what we see happen with Milan. Kelsier doesn't even think about Roshar as a potential ally. Where's Milan? Milan is rowing a boat across Shadesmar. And did you guys note the time? 19 months after the event, the news finally gets to her.
Yep. She's nowhere near.
Wayne is dying. And a sad moment. I mean, completely honestly, it was a bit of a sad moment there of the news, breaking for her. A couple interesting things in this epilogue, though. One of which it ends with her talking about her current duty is to save the lost people with the red hair.
Yeah. Who's that?
Lost people with the red hair. And that's all the clues we have.
I was trying to think of this. The only like super notable red hair I think of is Shallan, and so
Mm-hmm.
And who calls her cousin because she has red hair?
Horn Eaters.
Rock.
That's true.
So here's where my brain is going. We now have red-haired people. There's going to be about 19,000 assumptions I'm about to make, so just go with me. We've now seen red-haired people who are stranded in Shadesmar and need saving. Kelsier doesn't even think about Roshar as an option, as an ally. Trevor, you dropped a very obscure link of maybe blonde-haired people being the whatever they're called, eerie people in Bilming, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, what if Roshar does not exist anymore?
What if Roshar does not exist anymore?
What if all of our Rosharans are refugees looking for help throughout the Cosmere?
In Shadesmar.
Digest that for a second.
What if Milan's about to go meet Shallan and we missed it by 30 minutes? Come on, Brandon.
I mean,
I am now terrified for what we're about to pick up in Wind and Truth.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I mean, with this, we've predicted for a while now, like a good while, that Odium is going to win the Contest of Champions.
Yep.
And with that, doesn't that come essentially the destruction of the world on Roshar, aside from previously the people who agreed to be protected by Teravangian and his little area?
Right.
But now it is Teravangian, so who knows?
Right.
But yeah, I could see that basically everyone except his group of people could be either gone or like Elliot mentioned, maybe the Horn Eaters, they have a perpendicularity. Maybe that's how they survived and how they might still be alive. I actually buy this. I think Elliot may have just cracked the code, which we've maybe been dancing around for a while. That could be. I mean, because this whole time we've been leading up to Stormlight 5, it's been quite a big hype. I've been rereading. I've been looking at everything, trying to think through all of our stuff. And it's always the question of, how is Brandon Sanderson going to really wrap up book 5? Like how is it going to get to this crazy scale? How are we going to answer all these things? I think he's just going to blow up the planet. I think you're right. I think he's just going to say bye-bye.
Except for what? Except for what? There's it's in the contract. Yep.
Carbranth.
Except for Carbranth.
Yes,
Carbranth is going to be an island in the ocean, and everyone else is in Shadesmar.
That's going to be it. Yeah. Which I could see, because then we're going to be like, okay, well, what are we going to see in the back half of Stormlight? Like, where the heck do we go from here? So, it'll be interesting.
And I'll put a pin in this. I don't think the Roshar is going to explode. Do the humans
Trevor?
Do the humans get expelled from Roshar and the fused live on Roshar? Yes.
Maybe in Era 2, maybe it's more of like a, what's it called? Not a hostage situation, but like a life after being like under this probably like strict Odium rule or something like that. It's very interesting. This was not, I thought we were about to wrap up like 15 minutes ago. And here we are cracking book 5.
We certainly can now. Anything else for a wild ride at the end of The Lost Metal, gentlemen?
We're going crazy long, but this is what you get when you cover half of a book in one episode. One thing I think we can't gloss over that we should talk about real quick before we move on to our wrap up next week. Wax and Wayne did something to themselves to enable all these things that they do at the end of the book. Did you guys catch it? You almost could miss it actually if you weren't paying close enough attention.
Well, so they spike themselves, which is what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
And just real quick, it's little things like that make Sanderlinch is really unpredictable because who could predict before you get to it that Wayne would steel push Wax off a boat to save his life? And that's how the book ends. Like, there's so many steps that have to go there that you can't predict. But anyway, what were you going to say about hemalurgy?
Just the fact that our heroes are using it now. Up until now, since we started Mistborn, hemalurgy has kind of been the dark art.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the heroes don't do that, bad guys do. And here we have, in order to save the world, the heroes use hemalurgic spikes. And then add on top of that something that Marcy discovers, well, actually, Marcy discovers that the set discovered, how to make hemalurgic spikes without murdering the person you're stealing the magic from.
Yep.
That feels like it might have big implications.
Yep.
Is hemalurgy going to become something that now you can use without the ethical penalty?
It's like being a blood donor. You're
Yeah.
If you shave off 5% of they talk about this. If you shave off 5% hemalurgy from 30 people, then you can make and make a pin needle out of someone. Then you can make a Mistborn without killing anybody.
Exactly. So I don't know how I feel about this. Is this a problem? Is this not a problem? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Did the heroes just have to do something morally questionable in order to save the world? Or is it all fine now and it's okay to use hemalurgy? I don't know.
It says it's okay, but it,
Sazed's primary accomplices only function because of hemalurgy. So
true.
He's got some motive there.
Anything else?
I think that's all I've got.
The book ends with a letter from Harmony to Wax that says, "I'm sorry that I proved otherwise, but I promise with every axia of my being that no one else moves you." And that he closes the letter and decides to be all three men that he's been fighting with for 4 books now. And Steris has told him that he could be multiple men at once. Lawman, father, husband, senator. And that's how we leave Wax. I love Wax. I think this is probably it for him, unless he's like referenced as like a in the Senate in Mistborn Era 3. But as far as like on stage, really, this is it for Wax, I assume. So I love that ending for him.
It felt like a very heartfelt sending off for Wax there at the end. And I agree with you. I liked that ending for Wax. Wax has been on a bit of a roller coaster, and to be able to embrace his role as father, lawman, husband, senator was pretty cool.
I agree. I think this encapsulated his character and where his character should be, where he's supposed to end up. I think it encapsulated it super well, and in classic Sanderson fashion, it was just beautifully written and really heartfelt. And I'm really glad that we kind of got the answer to the original question that was kind of put into Wax's head of someone else moves us, lawman, and getting the like direct resolution, us as the reader, and for Wax as we come to like his character. I think was wonderful. Yeah, he was perfect.
Sounds good. Let's leave it there. Not quite 2 hours. And reconvene next week. We will be talking not only about the Lost Metal wrap-up, which I feel like we did a decent amount this week, but we'll do the Lost Metal wrap-up next week, along with a more zoomed out look at Mistborn as a whole. So let's go to next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Elliot.
On we go.
Bye.